All right, we're recording and another week, another Sunday night, and our crew from the Mentor Roundtable is back. And every week we have a different group of people talking about some of the topics in education. Of course, none of this would happen without Gaggle. So thank you, Gaggle, for your sponsorship, your support, and all the great things you do, not just for us, but for the students in education each and every day. So today, welcome in. We have four of our team with us. We have Emily, Melissa, we have Craig and Jackie, and we're going to dive into virtual parent conferences. But first of all, how's everybody doing? How was your week?
It was good. We had 2 days off because we had the election off, and then we had an institute day on Friday, which was all about self-care.
Oh,
So
wow.
so that was really, really nice. Very grateful for that. So there's a lot of self-directed learning. We had yoga classes, nutrition classes, all sorts of things. So it was really, really nice.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Craig, I saw you on Facebook and all over social, really pushing people to vote and exciting stuff. So it must have been a good Friday announcement, or Saturday. It was yesterday, Saturday announcement. You're happy with that?
Well, I mean, I'm excited that there's so much energy out in the atmosphere. People have come together really excited and rejuvenated by the vote. And so I'm just, most happy that we are breathing.
How about it, right?
Breathing. I can say that some of it, but it's been a pretty decent week. Very intense, but decent week.
All right. Melissa, Emily, how was your week?
It was good.
That's it. I'm just cut to the chase. It's Sunday. It's good.
It was intense, like Craig said. I mean, it was nice to hear a speech that was like
Presidential.
very insightful and calm and for the people. And there was no negativity at all. That was like a switch for me. So
Right. We're almost like numb to it. Like, hold on a sec. Was that like a professional
yeah.
presidential speech? We've missed that. Where have you been for the last 4 years, right? Now, Emily, did you have to like mail in your vote because you're a Connecticut resident, or do you switch over now to Massachusetts?
I'm still considering myself a Connecticut resident. I just went home and I voted after school. So I went
Okay.
hung out with the family. All my siblings, we all came home from school and wherever we are and got to vote, which was really cool. We went together as a family, which was nice, to the elementary school across the street. That was good.
Awesome. And before the three of you signed on, was chatting with Emily, and is just like education is today. Friday, her whole school was in. Monday, the whole school is out, and they're voting Monday on what to do Tuesday. Like,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah, so my whole school, I happen to be half in, but the majority of my school is in all day, every day. But we go by county COVID cases, and we're included with Springfield and all the major cities around that area. So we have reached our 3.5%. So we are going fully remote starting tomorrow, but we're going to re-vote on it in the union. And so I am assuming that we will be able to go back full in, because that's kind of like the feeling of all the staff. But we'll see. Who knows?
We're just
I'm ready for it. Everyone's ready for it, so it'll be okay.
well. What I was excited for you to say, and which is great, is that since you were one of the few essentially hybrid teachers, everyone was coming to you for advice, right?
Yeah, so the table's kind of turned. I have all of my assignments and lesson plans and everything online, and I'm more Teams savvy. We use Microsoft Teams, and so all of like the veteran teachers and my mentor, they were all popping into my room being like, "Hey, how do you do this? What do you do for that? Like, what do you recommend for this?" Which is just so funny because all year I was going to them, and now they're all coming into my room like, "Emily, how do you do that? I'll show
Awesome.
you. I'll make tutorials." It's been funny, but
That's awesome. Must have been a good feeling for you.
yeah, it's been nice.
And that's what we're trying to do here. So the four of you are going to have to do that for some of the educators watching and soon to be listening. Some big announcements coming soon. But so virtual parent conferences. How does this work? I want to just throw it out to you all. How is it? How do we do this? I know we're accustomed to being on Zooms or Google Class or Google Meets or whatever you're using, but now we have to schedule these 10-minute parent conferences. And for four of us who've done this parent conference kind of routine for a long time. It's that knock on the door, 10 minutes are up, come in, out, coming out. How's that going to work now in our schools? How are we going to help our new educators figure this out, and our veteran educators for that matter?
Well, we actually had ours about 3 weeks ago, I think.
Wow, that was
Um,
early.
Yeah, we had them very early. So what we did is we used Zoom and we sent out a Calendly. So my team teacher and I did them together. So we met with 35 parents all in one day. So it was a crazy day. But so we sent out a Calendly invite and we had like 15-minute increments. So we sent them the link and they just clicked on the ones that were still available. So once someone clicked on it and like signed up, then those time slots weren't there for anyone else who clicked on the link. So it was like, it wasn't like, hey, email me what time works for you, because we figured that would be really stressful. And obviously they can't just show up all at once. So we used Calendly, which was really nice because then we had a schedule and they all knew what time to hop on. And we just sent one Zoom link and had them waiting in the waiting room. So we would only admit the parents that it was their slot and everyone else stayed in the waiting room. And pretty much they came in when they needed to. So it was a pretty nice flow with that. So we had a schedule through Calendly and they stayed in the waiting room when it wasn't their turn. So it's kind of like virtual hallway, I guess. But it
Nice.
worked out well, yeah.
And did that sync with your email or calendar? Like,
Yes, Calendly can sync with Microsoft, with like Outlook for Microsoft email, and it also can for Google, I believe. So you could just sync automatically, and I got emails every time people signed up.
awesome.
Yeah, it was really, it went really well.
Yeah, we are definitely not that organized. So I'm a little jealous. We are, so again, first year at the middle school, and I was unfamiliar with doing team conferences. So most of my conferences are going to be team conferences, which is going to be interesting. We have a couple already signed up just because we do need a translator for them. But otherwise, the parents are signing up through Sign Up Genius, which does not sync to anything. So I think we just have to like put that into our Google Calendar. But yeah, no, I think that's genius that you had something that could sync up and you were able to see, you know, who signed up when, and you got an email and all of that. But I am looking forward to the team aspect of it because one, you have the support of it's not just happening in my class, it's happening in others, or you know, we prioritize the students that were struggling with particularly like the asynchronous learning. And so, you know, it's kind of nice that the parent will, you know, be able to get that information all in kind of one, you know, 15-minute conference, so that we could all like come up with supports, which I really like. And we're able to do them from home again, which is really nice. But yeah, I'm nervous a little bit about the organization because I'm just not sure how that's going to go. But these are really good suggestions, so I appreciate that.
We can't really hear you.
Oh, you mean I'm on mute?
Well, it didn't say you were on mute, but I don't
No,
know.
well, no, I was asking Melissa. I said, you've been virtual all year long. Am I still on mute, or are you now you're just messing with me?
No, that was funny. Sorry.
What are you doing? Because your kids have already been virtual all year long.
We're doing like Jacqueline with the Sign Up Genius that doesn't really sync to anything.
Okay.
We use Canvas, but I teach second, but we're doing student-led conferences. So the
Oh, wow.
kids had an outline and they're showcasing their best work, and they're going to be in there with me because it's their conference, not mine. So I just emailed like 6 emails before the mentor roundtable just to remind my 6 and said, you know, it's student led. I really hope so-and-so will be there. But if you want so-and-so to leave after their little spiel, that's fine too. But they're going to be there. So.
Okay. Now, Craig, how does it work with your group? Because you have a large range of students in your school. Like it's
Mhm.
not like traditional elementary, middle, high school, right? You run the gamut.
Yeah, I mean, we're K-8. I was gonna ask Melissa about the student-led conferences. I mean, we're having our parent conferences in 2 weeks. I mean, we use Zoom as well, and we use Google Meet as our virtual conference mediums. But in regards to what are some promising practices, I mean, I even put it in the chat with Jay about um, we're at a place where people are open to different ways to actually engage families in a conference perspective. And so I'm actually more of a learner here because some of the things that I've done student-led conferences. I've actually taught students how to walk through, their portfolio with families. Here's a rubric, here's a checklist, here's what you get to choose what you want to present, what you're excited about. But virtually, I'm like, is that a slide deck? Is that do we go through your Google Drive folder? Like, so I am really in a place of like listening for ideas here today. So I look forward to actually having a switch up because we're in a place of trying to figure it out.
Yeah, no, I think that's great, and that's another thing to dive into. I definitely want to ask Emily what some of the things she did, but yes, scheduling is definitely the first hurdle to get over how to get everybody in. And if you check out the chat, Jay, who had a chance to jump in with us a few weeks ago, an amazing principal, talked about using Google Meets and using students' last names and having that opportunity to schedule efficient chats. And I think about the meetings when you walk in, you have the folders out and the student work and the different things. Like Emily, what did you use to show? Because you're going to have like 10 minutes in and out with people logging in and in the waiting room. What was some of the student work products that you went through?
Yeah, it was quick. It was mostly just a conversation, and it was so early. So obviously we had student work, but we didn't have like portfolios and everything because it was only like 7 weeks into school that we had these conferences. But we would just share our screen on Zoom if there were certain things that we wanted parents to see on their team's assignments. So if we had things that they typed up and submitted, like their personal narratives they've been working on, or like a PowerPoint that they had made, we could just share screen and show that. So that's how we would show student work, because most of it's online already. So we could just access their account and share screen from our teacher side.
And can the students share from their side, or you would have to be the controller of that?
We didn't have students on with us. We just did it with parents.
Okay.
But kids could too. So like when we're on Zoom with them, they can share their screen with us the whole time as well. So if whoever's on Zoom, you can give them like access to sharing their screen. So they could share their screen and run through it if you wanted them to. Zoom definitely lets you do that.
And how does that work with student conferences, Melissa? What are some of the things, what are some of the highlights, or how are you going to run that to have students share? Am I on mute again, or you're just making faces at me the whole time? Now you're just messing with me. I looked, my green light's on.
We're using Flipgrid as a kickoff because, like I said, this is second graders because they're going to be nervous. Even though mom and dad's there, I'm there. So it's kind of weird. So they're going to have Flipgrid. So I'm going to let them know you have one or two options. You can get off camera and watch your child's, or I can bring it up and share my screen and we can watch it together. Some kids probably don't want me watching it, although I've already seen them and they're super cute. And then from there, the kids I can give them access, just like Emily said, on Zoom, you can give them access. And my kids, like I said, they're second. So they like crave that power.
I'm sure.
To be able to have that control. So, but it should be interesting. I have 20-minute time slots, and I have 3 sets of twins. So
do they get 40? Or are you going to squeeze them both in? Okay.
Back to back. Yeah. So they're not going to get in Zoom until right at the time. Because that's 40 minutes. That's a lot. So, but it should be interesting.
Awesome. And Jacqueline, what would you share with your families? What are some of the things that you would bring up, or some of the real salient points that you would share?
Well,
and how are you going to do it?
Yeah. So we're also using Zoom. And so, what I really like about it is what a couple people already shared is that you can share your screen and show student work. And I don't know if the students will be there or not. We haven't talked about that yet. I've done student conferences in the past, and I think those are by far the most effective conferences you can have. Um, and so, I like that everything, this is also my first year using Google Classroom. And so I love that everything's just right there for you. You can see, what the students have turned in. So if there is any, question about, student work, or if there's, a need to show an example to a parent, I have all of that right there for them. And I can quickly share the screen and show them, this is what I saw. So I really like the aspect that we have everything all digital now, because, on occasion they would turn something in, obviously, on Canvas, or, whatever format or platform we were using. But, on occasion there would be papers that you would hand back to the students, or their final drafts would be paper, a rubric would be paper, and now everything is online. So,
Right.
so I really like that you can pull anything up at any time and have that record to be able to show the families. But I do really like to make sure that, we start the conversations, because we're prioritizing the students that are struggling. And I don't want it to turn out to be a negative, situation for the parent. So I really want to make sure, that I start out with something positive every time we meet with a parent, because, I don't want them to get bombarded by, here's why your student is struggling.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And one of the things that we tried, I mean, I'm going to use the most overused word in the last 6 months. We tried actually a hybrid piece of it, where it was a little bit of a student-led conference, but the students aren't necessarily there, where we were using Wakelet, and we had students select, depending on the grade level, but anywhere between 4 to 6 pieces that they've worked on digitally, and load up a Wakelet, and then the teacher would have it, and they'd share, like, this is what your student is proud of. This is some of the work that we did, and then bring in some data piece, or an underperforming district. So that's a piece of our conferences, where where your student is, how you're going to move them forward, and talk about their kind of action plan too. But I always remember I'd sit in those conferences, and one of the first things that parents would ask would say, well, does my child have friends? How do they behave in class? How are we going to address that? Like, they're on the computer for, Emily's kids are in a few days a week, but how do we answer that question? How do they get along with their peers? Like, what are some things we can give guidance to teachers when they get that question? Because they might not be that direct, but it's going to be something about how are they behaving on Zoom.
Oh, we did
I'll,
talk. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
no, well, go ahead, Emily.
Craig, go ahead, and then Emily, jump in.
I was like, Emily is on the ground. She's in it.
She is definitely.
I think that what I'm hearing from parents, because we just did a town hall on Thursday where we just kind of asked parents, hey, how is remote learning going for you? And we have our student town hall on tomorrow. And so what we're learning is parents are interested in our students making academic progress. They want to know what the benchmarks are. They want to know, well, what is it that they can do outside of the work. Parents want to know whether or not their kids are withdrawn, because some parents are working, so they don't know what's happening with their kid behind the scenes. So they want to know, are kids actually engaged? Are they withdrawn? Is there some social dynamics that are happening? And what is it that we can offer to support some of the gaps that may be happening? So parents don't know that their kid is not showing up to all of their classes, or they find that the kids are not responsive to questions. Then we have to do this big checklist of like, well, let's figure out, well, what in the world is going on that you're not participating in learning. And so that's what we've heard so far from families about what they would love to hear about kids.
And Emily, you were going to jump in.
Yeah, I was going to say, for third grade too, a lot of parents were very concerned or very interested to hear if there was any social interaction going on for them there, because they're saying, like, my kids don't get to see any other kids. Like, do they get a chance to talk to each other? And so for many parents, we did talk about, spend a good amount of time explaining some of the social interaction activities and things that we do, just because they are so worried that they're not going to be making friends and everything on there. And one other thing that did often times come up was just for like independent reading books. They're like, well, usually in school, like teachers are giving the students the books that work for them. And we do have online programs, but they were saying like, what level is my kid and how can I get them these books that are the right level for them, and just wondering how to support at home. So those were things that I would suggest, like thinking about too, just like how to give things at home for the parents, because people were wondering how they can help a lot.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Melissa, how are you tackling the socialization question since your kids never are in school?
I don't really get a social question.
Okay.
Because it's like a big party in the morning and the after. I'm serious. So I don't think they ever ask. It's always about academics and their
Okay.
concern. And the biggest thing I tell them is my main focus is not the academics. It's your kid feeling safe and loved and enjoying school. And I told them they are going home and seeing the other kids on their cul-de-sac talking about school and being face to face, and they don't get that. So
Right.
these are kids who are being online because of safety or their compromised immune system, whereas everyone else is doing the hybrid. So it's just, and then they come down and they're like, oh, you're absolutely right, blah, blah, blah. Because
Mhm.
let's face it, they're not going to be exactly where they're supposed to be during this.
Right, because they had the gap from
Okay.
the spring as well.
And yeah, and it's second grade. I mean, this is so, but I've never really gotten the, how is my kid like behavior on Zoom and socially?
Mhm.
But I might this week since it's conferences. I don't know.
Yeah, you have to keep us posted. Jackie, when are yours? When are your conferences?
Ours are the week of Thanksgiving, so the Monday and Tuesday of Thanksgiving week. So we've still got a couple weeks. Our parents haven't even signed up yet. I do, yeah, I don't, again, being middle school for the first time, I don't know what kind of questions they're going to ask. I know when I get emails, we're in person, so we're not going to get the same, social questions, I don't think, as some of the others. But parents are really concerned about, the amount of work. They're concerned about, mental health stuff. So, we've definitely been talking a lot about, just kind of what we can do to continue to help students navigate both, the in-person and the asynchronous learning at the same time. So, and it's new for us too. So I think that, we just we don't have the answers, and I don't know. That's what I'm anticipating, or that's what I'm worried about, I guess, is that we're not going to have a lot of answers for parents because we've never been through this either, and we don't know if like what we're doing at is working. And so so I think it'll be very different and very interesting to see how that dynamic works.
I'm sure. And Craig, as the principal, or are you called the headmaster in your, or this the big cheese? Like, what do they call you?
I'm actually an executive director, so I'm like
Executive. Sorry,
superintendent.
excuse me,
Yeah,
executive
no,
director.
it's okay. It's okay.
Do you have you set expectations for your teachers? Like, what are some things you're looking for as the principal that they communicate?
Mhm. So we are, one of the things that I'm big about is ensuring that families know how far or, close their kids are to benchmark.
Mhm.
And so whatever is benchmark for those kids, parents just need to know clearly, like, this is what your kid is doing really well at. Here's what we're trying to grow them. And so we have to make sure that we also have a growth mindset. We recognize that there may be gaps socially, academically, behaviorally, and you just want to make sure that families know that your kid is going to grow through this process. Our job is to create the kind of supports that will help to kind of give them the virtual or hug that they need in order to navigate the challenges that may come up. And so, with that, I say to teachers and staff members, just be patient with yourself. It's okay that kids are not exactly where you want them to be, but they have the opportunity to grow from wherever they are. And through feedback and through a lot of creativity, you can actually see kids thrive and grow. And so, just spending a lot more time making sure that teachers feel good about the kinds of ways that they're going to communicate, how they're going to communicate it to families. And then when we talk about families, not trying to use a lot of educational jargon, They really just want to know, is my kid okay? You
Right.
know,
That makes a lot of sense.
is my son or daughter okay? And our job is to figure out like, yes, and here is where they're shining. Here's what we can do to help them to get better. And so that's what I know families have been asking.
Awesome. No, no, that's critically important because after the event or conference, kids got to come back and you start this all over again, and you have to make sure in this ever changing environment that the kids feel like it's a place they can go, either a virtual place or in person. So, Emily, as the veteran in this scenario, what would be something that would surprise educators that happened to you during conferences? Not like wacky, like someone threw a chair at you, but like what is something you wouldn't think a teacher would know about that you experience and could help them through?
Um, Honestly, our conferences went really smoothly. We didn't really have too many tough questions. I think that one thing that we did realize was for remote learning, math is different. And parents kept saying, like, we don't know how to teach our kids or help our kids do the math that you guys are
Mm,
doing. Like, we didn't learn that way. And so it was like almost an overwhelming response of parents saying, like, we don't know how to help our children with their homework and all of this. So the math teachers actually got together and made some tutorials on how to like do some of the things. And so I think it was kind of just having parents and teachers, especially with remote learning, being on the same page of like how to instruct using the strategies that we're using in class with their homework too. And I guess parents were interested in that, but I think that was really the only tough question of how to help with and that we had to follow up with later. Other than that, parents were really great.
and did you have a co-teacher, or do you have a co-teacher and did they
I do
join?
I do have a co-teacher and we did all of ours together. So I am teaching ELA and my co-teacher teaches math. So we have our two classrooms. Typically on Zoom, I teach ELA on Zoom and then I teach ELA in person. And she does the opposite, like math and then math. So yeah, I didn't really have, that's why we did them together because she could talk all about the math side for me. But
Awesome. And Melissa, 'cause I'm going to push on this a little bit because I think it's such an interesting idea. Can you go deeper into student, like how do you start student-led conferences? Like it sounds easy. You make it like nonchalant, like, we're going to do student-led conferences. Like it just happens all the time. There, it's hard and teachers don't often and do it. So how would we start that?
Well, I started in small groups with their reading groups, reading writing groups. And then we brainstormed together a list, a checklist for them to have for the student-led conferences. So it's not just me putting this list together. And then we tweak it down to what they all want in their Flipgrid. And then we are together either in a morning Zoom or in Zoom, and I put them in breakout rooms and they collaborate with each other and write in their checklist. So they have a detailed script.
Okay.
So there's not a lot of because they're second. They're
And
and then
there'll be some of that.
yeah, I tell them to make it your own, have a little fun with it, put a little flair. So they do that, and they did a great job. So I'm excited for now. Some of them probably already showed their parents because I think they were itching to, but
And excited.
yeah. But I have a Google folder for each of my kids, and I put their work in there and the assessment testing kind of that we did at the beginning of the year, which some kids had their parents do, which is great conversation about how
The
their
parents did the assessment?
I had one kid who scored a 90th percentile, and they're at a first grade reading level.
All right.
And
So back up for a second. How did that conversation go? Like, tell us how you called the parent. Like, what did that sound? Nothing. Just
I'm
let it
not
go.
even, it's a test that they're making us do. It's not a valid test.
Okay.
Nothing I agree or feel strongly about. And all of us teachers know what's going to happen. So there's no, I mean, we told the parents, please, have the kids do it by themselves. And obviously a couple of them didn't. I have a lot of ELA too. So those parents might feel like they have to, or they may not have understood exactly what I said. But I don't say anything and I just let it go. I don't address it at all because it's a test. It's not really valid. And we're in a pandemic here. So half that stuff is
Fair enough.
so.
Um, how about parents? Like, do you send anything home to say, I'm sure many families, obviously, since March have had online meetings and different things, but there's communities that maybe their jobs don't require them to be online. Do you send anything home? Do you give any guidance? Or if not, what should you or we as educators send home to families to expect for conferences online like this? Or nothing. We can just wing it. Like, what are your thoughts on that? Because I've seen, you see the horror stories where, I had somebody, we had, I'll just say it, but at our last professional development, we had a lady in her bathrobe, a teacher in her bathrobe, ripping a Newport. Like, okay, all right. And I'm texting the vice principal, like, do you see what's happening? And he's like, yeah, I'm mortified. Like, okay. Like, do we send anything home for families to say, like, camera's gonna be on, and if not, do you think we should?
Yeah, I don't know. I struggle with the camera thing because I personally, if I'm, in a professional development, like we had our institute day on Friday, and there were times where my camera was on and there were times that my camera was off, and I think you have to trust that whoever, as adults, that we can, have a proper conversation without the camera. But yeah, I don't know what I would have done in that situation that you were in. I mean, we, over the last, 9 months or whatever. I mean, yeah, there have been conversations where, people have been drinking wine while they're listening to something at night, and, whatever. I mean, it happens. And so, yeah, I don't think we thought about that communication piece. I think that's why we're so silent, is that, to parents, we just assume that they would treat it like a normal parent teacher conference. So yeah, I think that's an interesting piece as an administrator to think about for sure.
Any issues with yours, Emily?
No, I'd say like 85% of our parents all had their cameras on and were sitting like at a night, probably at their student's desk, and were ready. We had a couple who were just clearly holding their cell phones in the car or something. So I feel like they
The
weren't
drive
really
Zoom.
super engaged. But we didn't have any big problems with all of our parents, which is nice. They all seemed to treat it as a regular parent teacher conference, thankfully.
Awesome. Craig, what are you anticipating for yours coming up, and how are you gonna what are some of the efficiency strategies maybe that you're going to share with your teachers, or to really make the time well spent so it doesn't turn into 10 minutes of you're on mute? How do you share a document?
I think it's over communicating to families, sending videos in advance to their email. Here's how to use Zoom. Here, here's
Yes.
a playlist, a PDF. If there's a language capacity, we also have to work on making sure that families have resources in hand, that are also language accessible for them. What does that look like? Is there going to be another member in the community who is going to also help walk you through the family engagement experience or the conference? So I think as much preparation as you can send out prior to is helpful. I've heard from staff members and families that even a 2 to 3 minute video that says, "Hey, here's how this thing is going to go," just to get you set, goes a long way, because families then feel like, oh, I can do this. This is not going to be as stressful as I thought. And then you can focus on what's at hand, learning how your kid is doing. So that's what I've done. And, seen some success so far. But
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense, and I know you use a lot of videos, Melissa, and that just those definitions and just sharing your screen saying, here's where this button is. I have found too, again, we use Wakelet a lot, and it's something I use almost every day because it's just a curation of tools and strategies. And we send something home. I pulled together resources from a lot of folks to just give families that here's how to do it, because we also use Google Meet. So the tricky part to that, not that it's different and not that it's going to be a stretch for them, but it's you signing in with your Google account. There's other steps to do that. So we really tried to walk them through. And man, this week we got all the new features, all the new, breakout rooms and the background. So kids are like having, fun with this and messing with their parents. So we're definitely sending something home just to, and we have, obviously the three different levels, more traditionally broken up than Craig's. We have the elementary that goes up to fourth. So it's like, this is what our expectations are when you come on. And our elementary students, we have both the families and the kids on the call, and then the middle and high, it's just the families, just to get through. I'm sure some of them will have their kids as well. So as we were, 45 minutes flies by. What are some things as we think about the teachers who probably this will be their first time through it? What would be some strategies to ease their tension? Or, I know Melissa, you're on almost every day, and Emily, you're on half the days, and I know Craig, you're not in the classroom so much. And Jack, you said you were fully back, but what would be something we could give to families who are listening, either parents, teachers, or students who want to do a conference, kind of just like a send off? What's something to ease our teachers' minds as we approach it? I know in Massachusetts, this is the window between you, Emily, you're on the early side of it. And then we go to December 18th, and somewhere in there is where we'll have our conferences. What's something you could share with families that either you've done, experienced, or you think will help them? So Emily, you talked about efficiency. Like, what would be one of the things what could you share? Because it can't be, everyone's not going to be as comfortable. You've been doing this now every week, so maybe you're getting more comfortable in front of it. How would you get teachers comfortable in front of the camera with parents? They might be good with their kids, just like we are in class. How does that work with families?
I guess you could always, well, my team teacher and I, we each had a sheet that had everything written down, all of our notes, our glows and our grows, so that we didn't forget what we wanted to say, because sometimes it can be nerve-wracking, especially as a first-year teacher. It's nice to have everything written out that I needed to make sure that I mentioned and I could check off to make sure I said everything. But we also started off with just having the parents ask us questions before we got into everything. We said, like, do you guys have any questions about how remote learning is going, or concerns or things that your students are bringing up, just so that they start talking first and we hear what they want to hear too. So we're not just like unloading all of this information that they don't really care to hear at the moment. Like, they kind of just want to get things off of their chest, especially we were only 5 or 6 weeks into, like, they had a lot of tech questions and a lot of things like that first. But it was helpful just to hear parents talk first, and then we went through what we needed to say after.
Now, were the questions live time, or I'm just starting to think maybe, and I'll throw it out to the crew too. Did you have questions that they could ask before so that you were prepared, or did they just roll in like, here's my list of 25 questions?
We did just do it live. Like, we just asked them if they had any questions, but on Calendly, there also was like a notes section when you did sign up, and we had several parents type in notes like, hey, we wanted to check in on my student's 504, or could you like look into this, or this is something we're concerned about. Just so we knew that they were going to bring it up, which was nice to know ahead of time if they did have something big they wanted to mention, or if they wanted a specialized teacher to hop in on the Zoom with us too.
Oh, that's true.
Which was nice. So we had like our special education teacher, or sometimes our adjustment counselor, pop onto the Zoom with us. So because some parents requested that they joined or requested information about how that was going, so we kind of just invited them in. But Calendly did have a note section. So if you are using Sign Up Genius, I really do recommend Calendly. You can connect. It's super user friendly, and there is a note section, which was really nice. But that's something that we did that was helpful.
Awesome. Melissa, tips to someone who wants to start student conferences. Just a quick where to start, one thing to avoid. What are some of the positives?
I would say just go in and have the conversation. That's pretty much what we're going to do, is just have a conversation. Whatever comes up, comes up. I would say give yourself grace, be flexible and patient, because things are going to freeze. It's going to knock you off. It's crazy, but might as well laugh it off because it's just a crazy year. So
Oh, absolutely. I think giving grace, giving flexibility, I think that's something we're going to be saying to each other for a long time, for sure. So Craig and Jackie, any last kind of thoughts, feelings? I know Craig, you brought up some of the equity piece and some language barriers.
Mhm.
You know, how would you, not to skew your last piece, but what would something that no, I didn't even think of that coming in. What about people who aren't thinking about that for the language barrier? How would you
Mhm.
support them?
Yeah, I mean, I have to think about equity all the time in regards to at least the community I serve, and so we have families who we need um, closed caption. You know, we need
Hmm.
captions on the screen, and so what we need to do is just also make sure that staff members are aware, have a clear agenda, send whatever you can before families actually have that conference, so families can come with the questions they want based on what you send. So if it's report cards or progress reports or sample items, like have that stuff set up in like a separate student folder, so that family can actually review that, ask the questions that are burning for them. And again, the more you can actually send ahead of time helps not just you as an educator, but also the parent as well, because the parents have an opportunity to go through that content and they can see what's happening. They then can take advantage of, well, here's the things I'm wondering, because this is what I'm seeing. I'm seeing this, I'm seeing this, I'm seeing that. And also the other thing that I realize is there are some families who also, this is a very emotional time for them. They have a lot going on. What additional resources does the school have to offer? And so the school
Yeah.
should work very intentionally to make sure that families, after they finish, what are there videos that I can see to support me? Is there the school providing any additional supports, not just academically, but socially and emotionally for all families? If they need additional family supports, what is it that teachers can also say, hey, oh, we do have a food pantry, or oh yeah, we do actually have a happy hour for families, so that they can talk about, you know, special education or these other things. But if teachers have a menu of things that they can actually offer as well, I think it goes a long way to continue the message that we are partnering with our parents through this process.
Yeah, no, that's important. I wanted to really dive into that because you said it at the beginning, and I was like, "Oh, I want to revisit that before we close because that's super important." Jackie, any last thoughts, suggestions, shares?
Yeah, I was gonna say something pretty similar to Craig, because I um at my old school, we used to have like a list that we would share with parents that had all of our resources, like our homework club, our tutoring club, you know, all these things that, you know, the supports, who to contact if you're having, you know, if you have questions about XYZ. And we
Mhm.
would always give that to the parents. And that's really helpful, because websites are just really hard to navigate for a lot of parents. And so just to have that on one sheet is really helpful. And then just always go in with, you know, knowing that you're going to say some positive things. Cause I think especially like I said, I know that for us, we're scheduling, you know, the students that are struggling right now. And my biggest concern at this point is that they're just going to be negative. And so
Mhm.
you know, I'm really making an effort to make sure that, you know, I'm able to, you know, start with the positives before we talk about ways that the student can improve and grow.
No, no, that's awesome. And one of the things that I want to share before we wrap up, two things that I was thinking about is that I've been telling all of my teachers to practice, and it sounds silly, but to get on with another teacher in the building or another adult somewhere, to get on a one-to-one call with an adult and go through some of the things that you're going to share about your students, because if you've never done it before, you don't know how long it takes. You don't know how long it takes to share your screen and do certain things that maybe you haven't done before. And another strategy I've been really encouraging our teachers to do is have a close. what I mean by that is we could sit here and families just keep talking and we keep talking, or we are like trying to be active listeners and being respectful. Have something that, okay, this is how I'm going to close every meeting, to just have a cadence, be prepared. Maybe it's saying, all right, we have 5 minutes left, or say, oh, this was the last thing that I want to share. Have some cue for your families to know, like, we're wrapping up. And, like Emily, you said, you had some in the waiting room, and each person's going to do it a little bit differently, but that is definitely something I'm having our teachers do. Have some way to close the meeting. It may just be, here's your next steps, whatever it is. Have that prepared, or you don't want to run over in the first 2 or 3, and then it's going to be over the whole time, and that's hard to catch up digitally for sure. So we hit our 45-minute mark. I want to thank Emily, Melissa, Craig, Jackie for jumping on again, helping our new educators, veteran educators, because as we learned here tonight, Emily, as a teacher for 3 months, is the most veteran and the most experienced in this this topic. And you do have homework, by the way, Emily. I don't know if you saw our Voxer chat. You have homework that you and you and Molly and all the new educators, we want some topics from you, some of the things that you're experiencing. So I'd love for you to get in touch with Molly or some of your other new teacher friends and throw out some topics to us on Tuesday on our Voxer chat, or before, and we can say, all right, that would be great, because one of the things that Carrie said to me this week, which was awesome, and she's like, we're, some of the, I don't want to say adults, but some of the veterans are driving the conversation, and we want to hear what you are struggling with, or have thoughts about, or upcoming topics that you have.
Yeah, definitely. We should open it up on Twitter to new teachers too, or to have like a question box.
All right. That'll be my homework, and you get to talk with Molly and some of your.
We'll make a list.
Yeah, I like it. Awesome. So thank you all for tuning in. Thank you, the 4 of you, for jumping on a Sunday night. And I hope you have an awesome start to your week. And I can't wait to the 17th, Melissa. One of these times I'm going to get the chance to read to your class. 3rd time's a charm. For sure. Have a good night, everybody.